there's a lot of, I call it pockets of brilliance. So my job was really to move us from pockets of brilliance when it came to healthcare tech to an enterprise of excellence, right? So we did some great things like radiology specifically, right? We did some great things in AI, but for the entire stack, right? For the entire platform, how can we help everyone, every department? And so that's what we really aspired to, was moving from, pockets of brilliance, awesome, good for innovation and setting the pace. And then let's get the whole enterprise to be, excellent.
The following is a conversation with Ed Marx, formerly Chief Information Officer at the Cleveland Clinic. Ed is most well known for his decades of experiences in running large digital transformation programs and helping organizations embrace the best in technology. I am so excited to speak with him today to learn about his perspectives on leadership, helping organizations succeed, and how AI adoption can truly improve clinician workflows. Dear listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and please join us in imagining the future. Good morning, Ed. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to speak with you. Would love to start by hearing a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, maybe the 90-second version. I'm long time healthcare, mostly tech side. I started off as a janitor when I was 16 in a medical facility, and it was at that moment in time, I knew that healthcare was my calling. I just didn't know how it might manifest itself. So I did everything I could to sort of like take advantage of anything medically that came up. So I needed some money for college, and I was kind of a patriot type person, So I joined the Army Reserve, and they said, hey, I could be a combat medic. So I did that. And then after I graduated, even from college, still kind of tough to get a job. And I got a job as an anesthesia tech at a local hospital. And that just further emboldened my, calling, healthcare. And so ultimately I did get a salary type professional position, working in strategy and marketing. And then one day I got a chance to help out the IT people. We had a great new product, but no one was using it, typical adoption curve. And so I got involved with the marketing sort of aspect, and we went from 5% adoption to 98% adoption. And then all of a sudden I needed that specific technology to save the life of our youngest daughter when she was born. So it was at that moment, man, I know I'm called not only to healthcare, but technology in the intersection to save lives. And so ever since then, I've been a longtime CIO for different health systems. And then I've been on some boards of some health systems, and I've led some vendor side companies. So a lot of different things, as long as people will keep me before they fire me, I stuck around.
Yeah, I think that's pretty gracious of you to say, but I know you've done a lot there, and there's a lot to unpack in all the experiences that you just talked about. I think most prominent of which is probably maybe what we consider one of your most significant contributions is, being Chief Information Officer at the Cleveland Clinic, which is one of the most established and prominent organizations in the world. The Cleveland Clinic also, separate from providing incredible care and really innovative care, it's also one of the most tech-forward institutions in the world. Based on your experiences, what was it like to be CIO at such an esteemed organization that was tech forward? And what do you feel like the immediate value of, everyone talks about AI. What do you feel like the immediate value of AI is today in healthcare?
Yeah, it was super humbling for sure. I mean, I loved it. It definitely was something, I aspired to grow up to, and just loved every moment that I had there as part of that organization. And, with technology, the clinic isn't dissimilar than other organizations, where there's a lot of, I call it pockets of brilliance. So my job was really to move us from pockets of brilliance when it came to healthcare tech to an enterprise of excellence, right? So we did some great things like radiology specifically, right? We did some great things in AI, but for the entire stack, right? For the entire platform, how can we help everyone, every department? And so that's what we really aspired to, was moving from, pockets of brilliance, awesome, good for innovation and setting the pace, and then let's get the whole enterprise to be, excellent. So that was a big part of it. And interesting on AI. So if you were to Google, like every year, the Cleveland Clinic does top 10 innovations of the year type thing. And I was involved in 2017, 2018. And so I was on stage, my big announcement was AI. And that's almost 10 years ago. And as you know, AI has been around forever, especially in radiology, long time users. And so, but as you know, obviously it's become more into the forefront these days because of the speed of technology, how quick things are, and just, the overall adoption curve has just super accelerated. So everyone knows about it, using it, and that will definitely continue. So that was sort of like my experience at the clinic, just awesome working with all these super smart scientists and clinicians like yourself, coming up with great ideas. I can't take credit for any of it. It was really all their ideas. All you have to do though as a tech leader is just listen. Be humble. Do not make anyone come to your office. Go to their office, go into radiology, go into surgery, have those conversations. That's when the magic happens. But man, if you're a tech leader that thinks, I'm Mr. Sorry, I'm going way off script for you probably, but I'm Mr. or Mrs. AI or whatever, you're going to miss the boat. You got to hang out with the clinicians, spend time with them, see what's going on, the patients. Then you'll have this incredible AI experience.
That is amazing to think about. To your point, the humility with which you bring to the office, I guess, is really, really important to build trust. You talked a little bit about how some of the things that were early on, and I think continue to be challenges for systems, is to really scale AI and bring it to the enterprise level at these large healthcare systems. How do you approach trust in these technology transformations, and what does trust in AI mean to someone like you that's led these large technology enterprises? What does trust in AI mean, and how can organizations kind of center that?
Yeah, so I hope to come back to the heart of your question, trust in AI, but I want to hit trust first, right? It's already one of the things I mentioned, going to your customers, spending time with them, learning what they do, letting them know you care, because that act alone shows a lot of care and that you're willing to invest that time and you're showing that humility. That's foundational. The next thing is to invite them out. So I did this many times. The best example I could give you, and there's some AI that came out of this as well, but this is in cardiology where they didn't trust IT. And this happens at every organization. I don't care what you read about these organizations and everyone's in lockstep. No, they're not. Everyone's not in lockstep at any organization. We all aspire to be there and we all move towards that. But the truth is, I've never been anywhere where everything's been lockstep. So let's just take cardiology, for example. They didn't trust IT, and I don't blame them. I was when I heard the stories and I looked at my own, myself and my teams, I'm like, who could blame them? So we started meeting with them. We started building that trust. And we did this with everyone, but this is the best example I could give you. And so that starts to build trust, the relationship, start doing little wins, things that matter, what's important to them, and then helping them, whether it's inbounds or out of bounds. That's the other thing. A lot of times they'll ask for help that's maybe not directly related to whatever you're responsible for, but you do it anyways. You're just part of the team. So invite them out. So eventually I felt like we had a base of trust. So now I'm going to invite them out. So I invited them out to the data center. I mean, boring, right? For most people, and really shouldn't have a data center today, but this was 10 years ago. So I inherited a state-of-the-art data center, and indeed it was great. So if you're going to have a local, environment, it's good to have a state-of-the-art data center. Well, anyways, I brought the dean, if you will, let's see, what do we call him? The chair of cardiology, right? The most famous part of the Cleveland Clinic. I invited him to the data center. He stayed for hours. I had to leave. I had other things to do. He loved it. He was taking photographs and he made the connections. Oh, Ed, I get it. These are arteries. This is the, cardiovascular system. And he was lifting up the floorboards and the ceiling boards, looking at all the arteries and the capillaries and how it all worked. That built so much trust because he got to see, tangible, ask questions, take pictures. And then shortly after that, he was like, okay, what can we start moving, because they had their own data center. What can we start trusting you with? And then again, building on those wins. So that's how it's done. Yeah, so trust in AI, right? There's a lot of skepticism today, and rightly so. When we look at large language models, it's what's the data in them? So I think we trust that the AI works, but we're concerned about the source of the data, right? We've already heard about hallucinations, and we've heard about bias in some of the data that's already there. It's not like anyone was intentional about all these things, but it's just the way things happen over time. So to build trust, I think we do the same thing. Humility, be transparent, let everyone look. Okay, how do you build the trust? Let's look at this large language model. What is this data based on? Is there valid reasons for trust issues? And if so, let's fix them. What can we do to fix them? So I think humility, being transparent, and communicating. Those are the things that help, and including in radiology. Again, just the whole trust thing. Let everyone see what's going on. Be very open. Don't appear to hide anything because that'll erode trust super quick. And just be open to being wrong.
I love that so much. I think the transparency is super important and something that companies have to index on in this age of how rapidly the technology is moving. We talked a little bit about the different lines, and it's really interesting because these specific specialties, they're so important to the heart of healthcare. Obviously,
Yeah.
I want to talk to you a little bit about. I know you mentioned radiology, and radiology has become so important in healthcare today because so much of modern day healthcare is centered on imaging for diagnostics, for therapeutics, for follow-up care. Radiology has kind of become kind of the backbone of a lot of the entry point. And radiology, to your point, has also historically been a really tech-forward specialty. Yeah. Do you have any specific perspectives on the field in your time leading tech organizations as part of a healthcare system?
Yeah. I always smile because the first learning for me when I was CIO, I was a super young guy. I was in my early 30s. I was at University Hospitals, a great academic medical center, also located in Cleveland. And it was the same sort of thing. Radiology had its own IT, had its own data center, and they didn't want anything to do with IT. And I understood completely. So I left them untouched for a couple of years. But the time eventually came because, we're getting more audits and things like that from a security standpoint, from a compliance standpoint. There were things happening where they just couldn't keep up and they really needed to come over. But over the years, I developed a relationship, and I just remember some of these discussions and they were earnest and I was earnest and we figured out, a path. But it's then when I realized, wow, the radiologists, they are the most tech forward, right? Because their entire practice has been based on technology since the beginning. Whereas in other practices, we've just brought on technology in the last generation. So always tech forward. And again, a lot of times we're dealing with images, not NLP, where you need NLP, natural language processing. It's a lot easier, I think, with radiology than some of the other disciplines to do some of this automation. I consider AI the automation of automation. And so it's been a lot easier. So radiologists just naturally have always had this bent towards doing more and more. And like we said, there's almost everything now is based on imaging. Whether I'm getting just my routine physical, there's imaging involved. I tweaked my knee a little bit, and the first thing they did was an image and then an MRI. So yeah, it's definitely really, really critical and why they're so tech forward. And the other example, I think you asked for example, I know that when we were doing a lot of AI things like at the clinic, but I think this is done pretty much everywhere now with radiation oncology in the past. Now, I'm not a clinician, so I'm not going to get the exact percentages right, but from a layman's sort of view, we would do, photon therapy. It was like a 50-50 chance. It's a 50 chance we're going to hit the tumor, but the 50% chance we're going to hit outlying tissues and we're going to kill some of those tissues. But it was the best we could do. And it was still better than not treating the person. I mean, still great therapy. But as we've gotten better with AI, have more experience, now we're at the 98th percentile. We're at 98%, we're going to zap only that tumor and we're going to kill that tumor with only 2% collateral damage, if you will. And it's probably getting better than that. Some of my stats are, from a couple of years ago. It's probably better than that in some places. But that's an example of how it's just, wow, super advanced. Just that example is in the last 10 years, it's just amazing. So I think the future is really bright. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, I think you hit a really great point and really important point is how artificial intelligence has so much potential in kind of diagnostics and therapeutics. There's a lot of precision medicine now that's happening thanks to AI. To your point, those percentages of accuracy and precision have skyrocketed thanks to new technology. I also think there's a really important place for AI in physician workloads. And, there's a lot of tasks and administrative burdens that can often be automated. Yeah. So, for an example, a radiologist spends a lot of their time on the reporting, on the impression generation, on the paperwork. Do you have any perspectives on that side of things, the non-care delivery, but more on the workflow efficiencies that maybe AI can provide?
It's all about the clinician experience, right? So we talk about the patient experience, which maybe those examples are, great for the patient. I mean, obviously everyone wins in those past examples. But yeah, we need to do more with AI for the clinician experience. And that's why, when you think about investments, and maybe we'll talk about that later, you got to align all the values of the organization, where you're headed, with the AI capabilities, things like that, and find those sweet spots. But yeah, clinician experience is super, super important. And we all know the burnout that was accelerated through COVID and things like that. And, they're talking about a physician shortage. So how do we enable physicians to I hate using the cliches, but operate at the top of their license, so that they can focus on things where you really want their expertise, not sort of the mundane tasks. I mean, everyone wants that for their life. So yeah, some of the examples you gave already are really good. Like the reporting can be all automated. The responses to other clinicians can be automated. A lot of that to patients, if there's a direct patient, automated. Obviously, the billing and such. And I think the easiest example, because I deal with it on a daily basis, because my wife's a solo practitioner, and trying to get her to move to just ambient AI, ambient listening and things like that, because she does come home and it's traditional, pajama time where, hey, I just need an hour, I just need a half hour, which turns into 2 hours or whatever. So there's another great opportunity that many people have taken advantage of already. And I think we're going to continue to see that capability improve. So those are 3 or 4 key examples of which everyone could do today. There's no reason to wait. We're not talking, as you know, futuristic. We're talking here and now.
No, that's a really great point. That's one of the drivers that I always think about is we talk about a physician shortage in 20, 30 years, but actually it's here, it's now. Clinicians are struggling now. And really the golden moment for an opportunity to ease their workflows is now. So, radiologists, their read volumes have skyrocketed in the last 10 years. And so any opportunity to alleviate their burdens is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
You spoke a little bit about investment, and I think that's a key aspect to cover because, as CIO, you were probably in charge of evaluating a lot of these investments and figuring out how to parse that out. What criteria did you use, or how was your rubric to decide on whether to invest in a new technology? And how do you feel like that rubric or that criteria has evolved with how quickly AI is evolving?
Yeah, so I will answer the question, but quick backstory of lessons learned and things we should avoid with AI now. So if anyone's in my generation of leadership, so I've been a CIO from 2000s to 2020, so that 20-year span, we spent the bulk of our time cleaning up best of breed. So everything was best of breed. You had a different lab system, cardiology, radiology, and we spent all that time, with the monolithic EHR companies of today, going to a single platform. So that's how those companies became who they are. If you watch the numbers at HIMSS, you would see, 10,000 EHR vendors, and the next year it'd be 9,000, 8,000. Pretty soon you got down to 5. And so that's good for a lot of reasons. There's pros and cons, but mostly good. And so I see the same thing sort of happening with AI right now. And that's why it's really important to have strong governance and strong principles and values and things that you just asked me about. So it's a wild, wild west, right? Because you go to a conference, you're like, oh my gosh, I want that. But then someone else says, wait, our EHR vendor, they're gonna do that. And do you wait? There's that whole thing. And then who makes those decisions? Or again, you go to a conference, radiology specific or GI specific, whatever, and you see these great things that could provide immediate payback, great clinician experience, great patient experience. How do you do them all? And do you do them all? And so I always say, hey, have a structure. Because if you do not have a structure of some sort of what we term governance, you're going to be in a big mess. You might make a couple people happy for about 6 months, but when they start asking for interoperability and integration and workflow and things like that, you're going to have a hot mess on your hands and expensive to clean up and a lot of politics. So that's what I see happening, though, probably in half the organizations. They're just like, oh yeah, let's do it. So I think you need to take a more structured approach, but not too much structure. So I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here. Not so much structure that you stifle innovation. That's the other problem. So we were one of two extremes. Hey, everyone, it's a land rush. We welcome everyone. And then you got the mess I just described. Then there's the other one that's like completely shut down. It's like nothing's coming in. We're just using our EHR vendor as an example. Nothing's coming in. We're just, we take 2 years to make a decision, which, in AI terms, it's probably 20, 30 years. So it's important to have structure, but with flexibility. So going to the heart of your question, one is I've always had sort of structure where we had predefined principles. We didn't have to make them up in the heat of the battle. We had predefined principles. As example, we sort of had this 60-40 rule. And depending on the culture of the organization, you could slide this. In some organizations, I had it 80-20. My preference was sort of 80-20, but sometimes because of the culture, it was 60-40. But basically, if the incumbent platform could do 80% of whatever this niche, AI capability was, we're sticking with the platform. But if it was below that, and it was like a strategic differentiator that aligned with our different initiatives for the health system, then we would go with it. And so that was one of the principles. Another one we had was a 70-30 principle, which the 70-30 principle was how much of budget is for innovation, right? So we had budget split up into three. I'm going to try to remember the categories, but sort of like run, like what does it take to run the organization? And then there was the innovation, and then there was something in the middle. Run for a lot of organizations takes 100%. It's sad, it's tragic. So we had a meter, and the goal was 70-30. Basically, the top two categories, 30% of our spend was there, 70% on run. Now, over time, you want to get run down to 50%. So when we make investments, so this is where I'm headed with this principle of 70-30. So for us, it was 70-30. That's where we were at the time. So it's basically 70%, is going to be in the sort of those first two categories, run and sort of like, again, I can't remember the middle thing, but it's kind of like a blend of both. But we wanted 30% to be on innovation. So we would look at our budget. So everything that we gave a green light to, we would categorize in one of these three buckets. That's how we knew the 70-30 and where we were. So we wanted to make sure that 30% of our spend was on innovation. So that's where AI would fit in. So, well, in the future, right, it'll be part of the run. But right now, is the 30%. So we want to make sure. So that was those are a couple of guiding principles. Hey, can our incumbent do it, a platform? And probably not in all cases, like I mentioned, sort of this 80-20 rule. And so, hey, we can go ahead and go outside of the platform for the different strategic reasons I gave some examples of. And then we want to make sure that 30% of our overall spend on, applications was on something innovative, AI, something that we're doing different that would differentiate us, give a better patient experience, get a better clinician experience. So those are a couple examples, how you should have these predefined sort of measures that are public facing. Again, everything I'm telling you was transparent. I always have a website, internal website, could be SharePoint or whatever, that anyone in the health system can go to and look at our stats, real-time stats. Some of them were like boring stuff like uptime, but very important, uptime or project status. But a lot of it was budget too. So I wanted people to know, hey, where's our money spent? Yeah, half of it is on labor, just like everyone else. But here's where the other half is spent. And so we were very transparent about it, which really helped. And also super transparent. Sorry to beat this one down a little bit, but it's so important if you want to have success. Super transparent about what those values were, the 80-20 value, the 70-30. And we had others as well, but these ones relate the most directly to AI. So that's kind of how we sort of measured ourselves, and we're able to show value and prove value. Everything that we would do, we had so one more, because I think this will be helpful, super practical. So one more thing that helped build trust. So going back to the earlier questions, what built trust with the CEO and the board, the C-suite, the CFO? What could we do that was super innovative and strategically aligned? So I talked about how we did the strategic alignment, but now I'm going to go back to trust with something that we've just been talking about that brings the two together. When we make investments, we don't want to be cumbersome, like with 100-page, ROI analysis. We definitely do have an ROI analysis, but we came up with a nice, 10-slide maximum of any new project. So let's say someone has a great idea, like AI in radiology, we've got this new thing, it's going to be the killer app. And so 10 slides, everyone had the same 10 slides. So you can't like be super creative because then people who are making these judgments, couldn't, compare that equally to something else. But the one slide was the last slide, was the most important slide. It was the ROI slide. And the ROI could be strict probably a combination, financial, clinician experience, patient experience, whatever it is that's important to the health system, hospital, those were the things that we measured on. Okay, so you came in there and you stand in front of the CEO and God, basically, and say, hey, we're gonna make this $1 million investment and these are the outcomes in the next 6 months. Well, guess what? You're coming back in 6 months. You're coming back in a year. And actually the CFO with one of their analysts is there in the room. And when you said, hey, we implement this, we're gonna reduce FTE by 2, they opened the book. I mean, this is literally how we did it and what built trust. We opened the book and said, which 2? So, because otherwise people come in there and say, yeah, we're going to save the world. And then they never do. So this builds trust, because when you come back in 6 months, or sometimes it was a year, depending on how long the project was, and you came back, we showed that original slide, ROI slide, with the reality slide. So the same slide, but hey, what you said and what you did, that builds trust. And it was never punitive. So I want to make that clear too. So you come back And let's just say you didn't hit your numbers. Let's say you thought you're gonna, improve revenue because you had better automated coding or whatever, by 50%, and you were going to have a higher quality of care and higher patient experience. And let's just say you came back and you missed all three metrics, but you were close. It's like you were 80% there or whatever. There's nothing punitive. It's like, that is a great job. What do you think it'll take to get that 20% gap? What do you think has to happen next? It was always a learning. Now, what it did do is it built this sense of accountability in the healthcare system that you no longer had people show up saying, hey, we're going to implement this AI and look what's going to happen. We're going to change the world. They would be afraid to do that because they know have to be transparent and accountable. So that stopped. So all we had really left were really serious people who would put their credibility behind what they're saying. And again, never punitive, really a learning thing. And it just changed the culture. So that's how you can do this right. I'm not saying it's fail proof, but we were way better than anyone else when it came to our investments because we had this rigor of transparency and accountability. I went way long, but I want to be really practical for the audience.
No, this is an amazing, because what my follow-up was going to be, could you talk a little bit about some of those governance frameworks? But I really love that you talked a little bit about the 80-20 rule, the 70-30, and also I think indexing on trust, both external stakeholders, but also internally where you put your credibility as a bet.
Yeah.
And it's not punitive, but I think it's still important that you follow up and say, hey, this is, maybe it's not tangible yet, but we are seeing marked ROI in some form or fashion. That ROI may not have to be financial. It could be clinician trust. It could be improvements marginally, but that is important. I guess one final question that I would love to ask you is, in all your experiences and all your years of leading organizations, if you had to talk to a healthcare organization today and tell them one piece of advice on how to embrace the future and, change their mindsets as to what's happening right now, I know we talked a lot about trust, but what would that one piece of advice be?
Well, it might surprise you, but it's just foundational to all digital transformation, whether it was AI or otherwise. It all begins with you as a person, as a leader. And if you're not innovative, or we're talking AI, if AI hasn't changed your life, changed your practice, then it's not going to change your organization practice or the life of the organization, because you're going to self-limit it because you yourself don't know the benefit. And it's a challenge to me. I was challenged actually very recently, again, to go a layer deeper. Because if you go in a room and say, how many of you have used AI? Everyone, whether they know it or not, use AI. But when you say, hey, how has it changed your life? Give me some concrete examples. And so what I do when I speak about this, because this is the main point. I tell them, and again, I don't mean to make fun of anyone because I was there as well. And if it weren't for my kids, I'd probably still be there. But it's like, how many of you are still opening your garage with technology from 40 years ago, right? They have a little clicker on their visor, right? They're not even using the integrated capability that their car probably has with Bluetooth. And certainly there's an app for that. Or same with their thermostat in their house. They're still putting their finger on it and moving it and try to be precise, and they're unable to take advantage of some of the eco-friendly capabilities of automation. Those are just simple examples, and how has it changed, for our listeners, right, who probably have to create slides for presentations. Are you laboriously taking 20 hours for a new talk, or are you leveraging AI to at least, for me, I don't rely 100% on AI, but 80% on AI. Hey, give me some slides. I'm talking about X, and I'll use those as the basis, and then add, all my things to it. So those are just some simple examples, but it begins with us. And so when boards of directors, right? So I sit on the boards of a couple hospital systems. It's again, I don't mean this in a negative way because they're probably watching this and stuff, but I am preparing. I tried to teach them. I'm asked, to help teach them and some other boards, what's the capability of AI, because they are the ultimate decision makers in some of these investments. And if they're not using it, and sometimes these boards are made up of non-technical people most of the time, they're very strong professionals, very smart people, but they may not understand the power of AI and the power of AI in healthcare. And so it's helpful to train them, but it's helpful to challenge them. So I just challenge our audience. I challenge myself all the time. Like, how am I using AI? You know, a great example. Again, I learned most of the stuff from my kids. I have a kid. I could talk about my kids all the time. You know, and they're in different industries leveraging AI. But the one that jumps to my mind is one of my kids in music. Is like he's creating these, you know, big mega hits, and a lot of it now he can accelerate the time frame from the creative aspect to getting out the demo to getting the production of these records through AI. Like, he's cut it down by 75% of what it used to be. And so I'm always asking him, like, show me, how did you do that? Oh, you created your own LLM? What? How do you do that? You know, it's stuff like that. So the challenge, again, just summarizing that long answer is, hey, it starts with each of us. That's my one word of advice. So do whatever you can to really accelerate your own development in AI, because as you learn from other industries and other things that are going on, you will bring that back to your job as a leader, to your job as a clinician, and you'll be thinking, oh, we can do this, we could do this. What about this? What about that? And that's the game changer.
Wow, thank you so much. I think that makes a lot of sense, that even in large organizations, it comes down to, you know, the lowest common denominator, which is the leaders have to believe in it first. And I love that concept. Ed, thank you so much for your time today. This conversation has been truly transformative, and I feel like we could probably talk for hours on this. I really appreciate all your insights that you brought over your decades of experience, and thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Well, thank you for having me as a guest, and thank you for doing your podcast to help other people. You know, I'm a big fan, big listener.